Hello everyone, Johnny Hurricane here from GamersHeroes.com, and why don't you sit back, relax, and let me tell you about the Warlords of New York expansion for the Division 2. Let's get started. Just so we're all clear, a code was provided by the publisher. Warlords of New York takes place after the events of the Division 2. A rogue agent named Aaron Keener is causing chaos in Manhattan. You might remember Keener from the original Division. He and his 4 lackeys are attempting to unleash a virus similar to the green poison, the virus which is the reason why the world is currently how it is in the Division. You and your fellow agents have to track down those rogue agents and take them out, one by one. Overall, the story of the expansion will run you probably about 10 to 12 hours, depending on how much damage you do. And the main story reason for killing these other rogue agents besides Keener is to find where Keener is. Gameplay-wise, however, they award you with new skills that you can use in combat. Got a sticky bomb, a fire sticky bomb, an electric trap, and a decoy. The sticky bombs do exactly what they sound like. Stick to enemies and explode, or stick to enemies and set them on fire. Decoy, exactly what you'd expect. You throw out a little pad and a decoy pops up. It didn't actually look like my character, but enemies still focused on it, so you can then get around and flank them if you want. The electric trap was probably the best of them. When an enemy steps in it, even an a robotic enemy steps in it, they will get stunned, leaving them open for you to blast. These abilities are fun to use, but I found myself falling back to my original abilities just because I was more familiar with them and I thought they were more effective. If you've played the Division 1 or the Division 2 you know how the combat works in this game. When you get into a fight, you find cover and you fight from there. The crux of the game is doing this, and boy, is it exhausting. Enemies have way too much HP and oftentimes take upwards of 25 bullets to bring down. Headshots do extra damage, but what's the point of a headshot if it still takes 10 bullets to bring an enemy down? Even base enemies sometimes have an extra HP bar now, making it even worse. For reference, I was doing roughly around 100k towards the end, and when I leveled up, I would get about 20k HP for myself. Basically, the enemies are rocking millions of HP, while I'm not even at 300k. While I don't need to be a god, I do want it to be a level playing field. When I finally hit level 40 and crafted my high level weapons, enemies did go down much quicker, but the grind to 40 was absurd. A positive in the crafting is now that skills are much easier to understand. You get plus skill power, plus armor, and plus weapon damage. It's plain as day, unlike the original Division 2, which had like plus 737 skill power, plus whatever. It's a lot easier to understand now, and for me, who came back after only playing the original Division 2 and not any of the expansions or anything, this was a lot easier for me to understand, and I was thankful for it. Now, the enemy AI is pretty much the same as it was from the beginning. Shield guys and flamethrower guys will rush at you, others stay behind cover until you are close, and then they just run unless you suppress them, and the drones attack from the sky and try to root you out of cover. If none of that works, they spawn behind you, through a door, a manhole, wherever, and flank you that way. It is a cover shooter where the game actively wants you to move out of your cover and punishes you if you don't. And while we're on the subject of enemy AI, let's talk about the bosses real quick. I often speak about cardinal sins of boss fights in games. Somehow, amazingly, this game manages to check every single one of those sins. Bosses go invincible mid-fight, check. Bosses spawn ads out of nowhere, check. Boss fully heals while invincible and you can't do anything about it, check. Bosses disable your skills, because why not? Check. And on the subject of absurd HP numbers, bosses are easily passing 100 million mark, and at that point, all numbers just seem meaningless. I'd rather do 1% of damage consistently than deal 100k damage that appears to have zero effect. When you're not on your main missions, you can still roam the streets looking for loot, taking out control points, and other side activities. These are fun little distractions that made me enjoy the game more. I didn't feel funneled into a big square room or a long hallway with enemies constantly spawning. The more open area of the streets and blown out buildings felt refreshing as opposed to the interior designs of the main missions. That, and on occasion, random NPCs would come to join the fight, making things feel a little bit more manageable. Solo players beware though, exploration is not easy, and running into enemies on the street is very common. After you finally bring down Keener, some new activities do open up. You can still do bounties, replay missions on higher difficulties, or anything else from the base game. Now you have Keener's Watch though. which will give you minor buffs for grinding past the level cap. When I say minor, I mean minor. The base HP you get for this watch is 30, an additional 30 HP, which might as well be 0 because if a pebble falls and hits you, that's going to do 30 damage. You can increase your weapon damage, do defensive upgrades and other upgrades as well. They go up very small percentages. The weapon damage, for instance, increases by 0.2, but you can get it all the way to 20%. That 20% is a big difference, but you're going to have to grind for it. So if you're a fan of the Division, this grind is going to be exciting for you, and eventually you will get to significant numbers. But it's going to be a long and tedious grind nonetheless. And of course, you can't have a live service game without seasons. After bringing down the first set of rogue agents, a new set will appear weekly for this season. Regretfully, the first one was still locked until next week, so I couldn't try it out. Still, it is obvious what they expect you to do. Log in every week, take out the target, then come back the next week for the second target. You get loot rewards and extra experience, of course, but who really has the time to log in every week and deal with these shenanigans? I wasn't sure where to mention this next part, so I'll do it here. At what point are you just pulled out of the game? You're mowing down hundreds and hundreds of enemies that work for Keener and his goons. Why don't they just have every single one protect that one valuable object or objective, or group together and rush us? If Keener has helicopters, why aren't they blasting us from the sky? It's all for the sake of the story, and I get that, but a villain loses his threat level when his intelligence appears to be subpar. Keener never felt like a real threat until he was a boss with BS tactics and abilities. Just something to think about in the future. Now, let's get to the bugs, and oh boy are there bugs. When it launched, you couldn't even do the main missions. They fixed that one pretty quickly, thankfully. You can't leave Manhattan until you complete the expansion, so if you want to go back and do something, you can't. I had tons of sound bugs. Voices cut out, guns made no noise, explosions did nothing, texture pop-in is real bad, just like the base game, and I'm on the PS4 Pro. You need to kill enemies to progress sometimes, but they'll spawn behind a wall or up on a roof and they just won't move, forcing you to restart a sometimes hour-long mission. The game never actually crashed on me, but my PlayStation 4 Pro sounded like it was lifting off into orbit. And also, the game could really use like a ping system, like Apex Legends, just a button, you click an enemy and everyone focuses on that enemy. Because if you're not in voice communication or with a group you know, it's chaos. I know it sounds like I'm railing on this game, but Ubisoft just literally pushed every other game they have and said, make it unique. That is simply not the case with this expansion. It is more of the same and not in a good way. It needed more time on the grill, just like Ghost Recon Breakpoint did, and they didn't get it. I'm hoping it gets fixed in a couple weeks, but I'm not going to be around to find out. I can only recommend this game to the most die-hard Division fans. Constant bugs, exhausting combat, and a weak main villain leaves much to be desired. Alright, that'll do it for me. If you liked what you saw and got what you needed, like, comment, subscribe. See you guys in the next video. Later, Gators.